Now, preview time. So let's take a look at what's coming your way.
Ho, ho, ho! Merry Christmas! 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 Ho, ho, ho! Merry Christmas!
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another brand new installment of Renegades Reviews, exclusively here as always on the Casa D18 Studios channel. I, of course, am your host, the Renegade JJ Williams, and today we wrap up the Santa Claus trilogy by taking a look at the Santa Claus 3, The Escape Clause, starring Tim Allen, Martin Short, Elizabeth Mitchell, Judge Reinhold, Wendy Crewson, Liliana Mummy, Alan Arkin, Anne Margaret, Spencer Breslin, Eric Lloyd, Judge Reinhold, Aisha Tyler, Peter Boyle, and Michael Dorn. What's going on, everybody? Thank you for joining me here once again for another brand new installment of Renegades Reviews. As I said in the introduction, today we're going to wrap up the Santa Claus trilogy as we continue our week of Christmas chestnuts. We're going to discuss the Santa Claus 3, The Escape Clause. And as our movie opens, it's now been 12 years since Scott Calvin took on the mantle of Santa Claus, and 4 years since he married Carol Newman, who is now a teacher at the North Pole. On Christmas Eve, she tells a group of young elves a story from her life with Scott while they were expecting their first child. Scott invites his in-laws, Bud and Sylvia Newman, to the North Pole, along with Scott's ex-wife Laura, her husband Neil, their daughter Lucy, and Scott's son Charlie. Meanwhile, Scott is summoned to a meeting of the Council of Legendary Figures, which consists of Mother Nature, Father Time, the Easter Bunny, Cupid, the Tooth Fairy, and the Sandman, concerning the behavior of one, Jack Frost, who is jealous that he has no holiday or special occasion in his honor. Because he has been promoting himself during the Christmas season, so Mother Nature suggests some sanctions against him. As Scott is attempting to get the in-laws to come without revealing that he is Santa, Jack Frost negotiates a lighter sentence of community service at the North Pole, helping Scott and the elves put up various Canadian-themed paraphernalia, as Carol's parents believe that Scott is a toy maker in Canada. And Scott consents. However, Frost's ultimate goal is to trick Santa into renouncing his position. When now head elf Curtis inadvertently reveals the escape clause, Frost sneaks into the Hall of Snow Globes and steals Scott's snow globe, which contains Scott as Santa. Now, if Scott holds the snow globe and wishes to have never become Santa at all, he will go back in time and undo his career as Santa Claus. When Lucy discovers this, Frost freezes her parents and locks her in a closet. He then orchestrates situations that make Scott think that he must resign in order to make things better. Frost is able to trick Scott into invoking the escape clause, and both men are sent to Scott's front yard in 1994, when Scott caused the original Santa to fall off his roof and he had to replace him. Frost causes the original Santa to fall off the roof and is able to grab Santa's coat before Scott can, causing Scott to be sent to an alternate 2006, where he has been the CEO of his old company for the last 12 years, and business takes priority over family. Scott also learns that Laura and Neil have gotten divorced, and Carol moved away years ago. Scott then goes to find Lucy and Neil, who are vacationing up at the North Pole, which Frost has turned into a theme park. Christmas is now Frostmas. The elves are miserable, and the reindeer are confined to a petting zoo, and parents can now put their kids on the nice list by paying for it. Scott finds Lucy and questions Neil about Laura, and Neil states that Scott's workaholic absence in Charlie's life put all the pressure onto Neil, and Charlie didn't want him to be his father, causing the divorce between him and Laura. Scott then confronts Jack Frost and causes a distraction after convincing Lucy to steal Frost's snow globe. Lucy throws the snow globe to Scott, but Frost catches it, intercepting it. Scott then plays a recording of Frost saying, "I wish I'd never been Santa at all," from a novelty North Pole pen that had been given to him earlier, which invokes the escape clause, sending both Scott and Frost once again back to 1994. Scott is able to restrain Jack long enough this time to allow his 1994 counterpart to get the coat, making Scott Santa Claus once again, sending both men back to the present in the original timeline. Scott then reconciles with his family while Jack is arrested by elf police. Frost then reveals that he cannot unfreeze his victims unless he unfreezes himself, which is something that he will never do. So Scott convinces Lucy to give Frost a magic hug in order to unfreeze and reform him, and it works. Laura and Neil unfreeze, and Frost becomes a new person. The Canada ruse is dropped, and Scott appears as Santa to Carol's parents. With 2 hours remaining before Santa must leave for his Christmas deliveries, Carol goes into labor. Months later, while Carol is telling the tale to her students, Scott walks in to reveal their son, Buddy Claus, as our movie comes to its end. I know my daughter completely disagrees with me, but I definitely feel this is better than part 2, and dare I say that this movie is even better than the original. I know it's hard sometimes, the further you get down the timeline, for a third or fourth movie to be better than the original. But I honestly feel that this one is. And for me, it comes down to two very important characters: Liliana Mummy as Lucy and the evolution of her character from part 2, and Martin Short as Jack Frost. Now, first thing first, Scott in this one, I feel, is at his best because he's now in full swing as Santa, and he's dealing with the stuff that every family has to deal with at Christmas: bickering, fighting, the in laws, the stress of keeping the family traditions going, the stress of being Santa and having to get the toys delivered, the stress of Carol being pregnant and waiting for her to give birth and praying to God that he doesn't have to be absent when she goes into labor and gives birth. All these things just stockpiled. Then you've got Jack Frost, who is trying to take away some of the shine from Santa Claus and Christmas, which is something that we discussed in Frosty's Winter Wonderland, the Rankin Bass special, which I covered earlier this month. If you missed that, I'm going to link it up here, because a lot of the stuff in that short, that 30-minute special, is in this movie. In the 30-minute Rankin Bass special, Jack Frost is jealous of Frosty that the kids love him more than they love Jack, and Jack's the one that brings winter and Christmas. In this one, Jack is jealous of Santa. Again, Santa gets all the love, the shine, the specials, the movies. Jack Frost barely gets anything. Now, I will admit there is a Jack Frost Rankin Bass special. Didn't cover it this year. Maybe we'll get to it next year. But aside from like that and Frosty's Winter Wonderland, the portrayal of Jack Frost en masse in the media was very minimized until this. There have been a few movies since then that have had Jack Frost as a pretty good sized character. And again, we'll get to those somewhere down the road, the way Barry Manilow would say. But Jack Frost is kind of a forgotten Christmas character. So you can understand his resentment towards Santa Claus and the way everything plays out in here. And then you've got the evolution of Lucy, who at the end of the last movie found out that Scott is in fact Santa. And her love and her innocence and everything. Scott's called us in the very beginning how she's got magical warming hugs. And it's just kind of a throwaway because it comes off as just something that an uncle would say to a niece to make them feel good about themselves. But then we fast forward to the end of the movie, and Frost is unwilling to unfreeze himself. So she asks Uncle Scott, "Do you think it'll work?" Question is, do you? It goes all the way back to the beginning. Seeing isn't believing, believing is seeing. If she believes it to be so, she can make it so. So she walks up and she grabs him and he thaws out. And it's the epitome of the Grinch's heart growing 3 sizes that day. It's the reformation of Jack Frost in Frosty's Winter Wonderland. It's all those things kind of wrapped up into one big package, all because of a little girl's warming hug. And it's so great. Then you add in Anne Margaret to the mix as Carol's mom, Sylvia. And Anne Margaret was an icon in the 60s and 70s. You think things like Bye Bye Birdie, you think things like Viva Las Vegas, you think things like The Who's Tommy, even into the 90s, Grumpier Old Men with Walter Matthau and Jack Lemmon. This woman is an icon, and she's playing Carol's mom. And they even give her a little bit to sing of the Christmas song, Chestnuts Roasting on an Open Fire, alongside Martin Short, where she sings the line, Jack Frost nipping at your nose. And it just gives him goosebumps the way that she sings his name. There's so much in this film that I love to death. The only dark point in this movie is the lack of Bernard. That's the reason my daughter doesn't like this one. That's the reason why she almost refuses to even watch this one because there's no Bernard. And it's like, this movie is so good though. To the point that when I give my rating for this movie, this one gets 4.5 out of 5 stars. I do rank this above the original. My official ranking is Part 3, The Escape Clause, the original, Part 2. And again, Part 2 used to be a lot lower for me, but in recent years, I've gotten to the point where I do enjoy Part 2 a lot more than I used to. But they're just 3, 1, 2 for me. What do you guys think of the Santa Claus 3, The Escape Clause? Let me know. If you're watching the premiere, leave your thoughts and comments over here. If you're watching on demand later in the day, leave your thoughts and comments down here. Let's have that conversation, that discussion, that debate, that interaction that I'm always asking you guys for in the comments below. And make sure you guys tune in tomorrow, right here to the Casa D18 Studios channel for another brand new installment of Renegades Reviews. And tomorrow we kick off a double feature, if you will, over the next couple days. We're going to take a look at the original Home Alone, starring Macaulay Culkin, Joe Pesci, Daniel Stern, Catherine O'Hara, John Hurd, Devin Ratray, and John Candy. And yes, for the record, I know there's more than 2 Home Alone movies. However, we don't really acknowledge those in this house. I'm sure I'll review them at some point, but for Christmas chestnuts, we're just taking a look at the first 2. And then following Home Alone at the top of the half hour, we're going to take a look at episode 5 of the Santa Clauses. the Disney Plus original series, starring Tim Allen, Elizabeth Mitchell, Austin Kane, Elizabeth Allen Dick, Matilda Lawler, Devin Bright, Rupali Red, Cal Penn, Mitch Polus, Mauricio Mendoza, Dirk Rogers, Jim O'Hare, and David Krumholtz. You don't want to miss out on any of that content right here on the Casa D18 Studios channel. On Renegades Reviews, we kick off the Home Alone double feature, throw an episode of the Santa Clauses in there as well. So much more in store here this month and this year on Renegades Reviews. So make sure you smash that like button. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure that notification bell is turned on so you don't miss out anytime a video drops right here on the Casa D18 Studios channel or anytime we go live, as is the case with Statboy Sports Bar, Open Mic Night, pay-per-view PLE coverage, etc. Share these videos with your family, friends, loved ones, coworkers, movie fanatics, cinephiles in your life, fans of the Santa Claus, fans of Santa Claus, the mythical figure himself, fans of Tim Allen, Martin Short, fans of Liliana Mummy, fans of Aisha Tyler, or Peter Boyle, or Michael Dorn. Anybody you can think of that would enjoy this content in this video, share it with them. It's the only way we're going to boost my visibility up in YouTube's algorithms so I can eventually get monetized and make some money on these videos in my production. Thank you once again to everyone who joined me and tuned in today. It means more to me than you'll ever know. And I will see you guys next time.